This is what happened when I broke my postpartum recovery, just days after giving birth, because I was afraid of being cheated on.
Hello and welcome back. Today's video includes sensitive topics such as coercion and SA, which may be distressing for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
I hear there's men out there that are not waiting longer than 3 to 4 days to force their women that just gave birth to have intimate relations. So I'm going to give you guys a visual so you understand what you're doing to these women by not letting them heal properly. Oh, stick around. You're going to love this. I had a 9-pound, 4-ounce child the natural way. Approximate size of said child. Let me give you a comparison. It's gonna need a minute. Come on, you guys.
This may be really hard for some of you to hear, but you need to hear it. How many of you felt like you had to do the deed? When I say do the deed, you know, the horizontal jog on a very regular basis. How many of you? I was having to do it at least 6 times a week. So maybe one day a week off. And this got worse once my monthly stopped. I didn't have the excuse that week that I could say, I can't. And when I say that I had to, if I didn't, my life would not be worth living. I would not be allowed to sleep. I wouldn't get any sleep until I just did it. Let me tell you this now. You are not imagining it. It was wrong. It was sexual coercion. Very similar to rape. Yeah? Well, it is. It is because it's not consent. You're giving in because you need to have a little bit of peace. So you will give up half an hour of your time, even though you really don't want to, even though it may be really hurting, even though you just need to go to sleep yourself because you're just so exhausted from walking on eggshells all day, looking after the children, doing everything else while they come home after work and sit down and watch TV like their day is already finished.
So many men still need to understand this, but coercion is not consent. If you create an environment where it's difficult for her to say no, saying yes was never her own decision.
The patriarchy will encourage men to rape and protect rapists by making it sound like the definition of rape is incredibly vague, like there are loads of grey areas. And one of the ways that they do this, well, they do this in a few ways, but the main way they do this is by making the global definition of rape variable. So you go to country, and each country will have its own definition of what counts as rape and what doesn't count as rape. So that is not defined by justice. It is defined by patriarchy, depending on where you go. There was a woman who went on a date with a man. The date went really well. He said, "Do you want to come back to my place?" She said, "Yes, fine." When she got there, he wanted to have sex with her, and she wasn't feeling it. Things were a bit odd. She wasn't feeling the vibe, and she basically said no. And he started to escalate, basically getting really angry. So anyway, she's gone into the bathroom, locked herself in there, and called 911. And that call was recorded and was published on TikTok, some time ago, and it was circulating for a while. And in the comment section, men were saying things like, well, she went back to his place. What was she expecting? But going back to a man's house is not consent. There will be many women who've been in that situation and just gone ahead with it because they realize that in that moment, they are about to become a statistic. That man does not need a weapon. That man is the weapon. And if they don't go along with what he's saying, they are potentially going to be killed. So they will say, yes, okay, fine, let's have sex, then get it over and done with and leave. That is rape. A yes under a circumstance where a woman feels pressured, uncoerced or scared is not consent. Going back to somebody's place is not consent.
This is what happened when I broke my postpartum recovery, just days after giving birth, because I was afraid of being cheated on. It was only the 7th day after my C-section. I had just come home from the hospital when my husband started making demands. He said we hadn't been intimate for too many days and that he had needs. I refused and told him no, that I was still recovering and would need at least a month. But instead of understanding, he told me he wasn't going to wait. And if I wanted to make sure he wouldn't go to someone else, I had to agree. I couldn't believe it. I started crying, but he kept insisting, telling me I was being too dramatic. He was so persistent, and with the baby just born, I was terrified of losing him or of him going to be with another woman. So I gave in. Just 1 week after surgery, I broke my postpartum recovery. All I remember after that was a sudden massive hemorrhage and my heart stopping. I was rushed to the hospital in an emergency.
Anything a woman does in her marriage to keep the peace or keep her husband happy and satisfied is absolutely coercion, like this comment states. Here are more stories from women who have been coerced and violated in the marital bedroom. Happened to me for 8 years. The women in the congregation, including my mother, told me it was my duty. I was 9 months pregnant with twins, and he demanded I put out for my own good to help start labor. It was one of the most vicious fights we ever had. He literally said, "Schmegs is my currency." A few years later, after I had reconstructive surgery on my birth canal, he was so impatient, and when I refused, he said, "Your mouth still works." If I dared to be unenthusiastic or, God forbid, cry, I would be punished, and so would our kids. In the beginning, I could feel his energy shift towards me if we went longer than 2 days without schmegs. As the years went by, he would get angry when I got my period and would say things like, "Just because you're bleeding doesn't mean my needs can't be met." He would tell me to go have a shower at night, and that was code for it was time for schmegs. He would lay naked on the bed waiting for me. If I took too long, he would order me out of a shower because he was waiting again for his needs to be met. If we got into a fight and I made it clear that I didn't want to have schmegs, I would wake up later being entered without consent. I would have to put out every day to avoid his anger and accusations, ... I also had to help him with his urine drinking schmink, ... I had to perform and produce and also act like I liked it. If I wasn't enthusiastic enough, there would be yelling and name calling. My husband was a pilot, so when he came home from traveling, if he wasn't met with it, the entire home visit with his children would be ruined. Mine always told me that I never had a choice because I belonged to him, and reminded me often that because he loved me, he didn't want to hurt me, but he could because I was weak. When I said no because our young daughter was outside the door listening, he gave himself permission to go see hookers and blamed me for it.
Men, marriage does not entitle you to sex. Your wife cannot deny you something that you have no fucking right to. If your wife does not want to have sex with you, there are 3 main reasons. Number 1, you're just a human shitweasel and she really cannot stand you anymore, and the only thing you can really do is start to actually contribute around the household. Number 2, she's having mental or physical health issues, in which case, instead of throwing a temper tantrum about it, you should have some empathy and compassion and talk to her and try to find out what the issue might be and how you can help her feel better. And number 3, she's just not in the mood, so go polish your lightsaber yourself. You are not entitled to sex just because you are married. Grow the fuck up. And this is Bacon.
Coercion is an act in which you're using pressure, threats, manipulation, or intimidation in order to compel somebody into doing something. It's intimidating or forcing or pressuring or threatening someone to do something that's against their will or against their better judgment. It really undermines this individual's ability to choose by introducing fear, guilt, or some form of psychological pressure that makes it refusal start to feel unsafe or even impossible. Maybe there's been overt threats. Maybe it's not overt. Maybe it's subtle, like emotional pressure or guilt tripping. Maybe it's withdrawal of an emotion or affection with this person, or there's implied obligation. Here's the part that I really want you to hear that's super critical. Even if the person technically agrees, the presence of pressure means that true consent was not given, that it was compromised or actually absent. So when we start to talk about sexual coercion, it's any behavior that's the same kind of pressure that applies to sexual activity so that this person ends up moving into some intimate act with the other individual without freely consenting. So the key pieces to remember with coercion is that free consent has been undermined. They may say yes, but that's because they feel obligated or they're afraid of the consequences, because they're trying to avoid conflict, or because they feel responsible for the other person's emotions and feelings, or because they've been just frankly worn down by persistent pressure. You know, this is what we call in psychology acquiescence. This person has acquiesced to the pressure. The other thing that happens in coercion is that it doesn't have to be a physical intimidation or force. It can be emotional and psychological. Basically, and the one other is there may be an exploitation of power imbalances, or maybe there's an emotional vulnerability that's existing in this relationship. The outcome doesn't determine if it was coercive. So in other words, you may end up, that person may say yes, but they're not freely saying yes because they feel obligated or they feel manipulated or they know there's no way out. And just because the intimacy happened doesn't mean that it was consensual.
I want to talk about marital rape. You share throughout your book how your ex's abuse would strategically, verbally, and physically break you down. And then he would want to have sex with you. Do you think sex for him was his ultimate act of control?
I do. In the beginning, I felt like that was his way of apologizing because, like I said, he never apologized. He never would say he was sorry. So I felt like when we would have sex, that was his way of apologizing. But as time went on, I knew it was more about the control.
Oh, yeah.
After each abusive episode, after each verbal attack or emotional attack, he would come to me for sex. He knew that I was depleted. He knew that I wanted to be loved. Eventually, like I said, I realized that the sex was about control because there were times when we were having sex, I would say no to something and he would just say, well, just let me do what I want to do. And I knew that if I didn't just let him do what he wanted to do, it would become abuse. And I really didn't want the abuse to, even though that is abuse in my mind. I didn't realize, that it was abuse.
I tried to tell my husband my body jerks away from his touch without me. It's the psycho something nerves. I should have shut up because now I'm just a psycho. Also, my brain will delete arguments right after they happen. I know we were arguing, but it's literally nothing. My body knows, but my brain decides to go elsewhere. This happened to me too. It's dissociation. I also flinched and I dissociated. And I forgot things to the degree that I still struggle with memory today. I've healed a lot, but there's a lot I don't remember.
A lot of men don't want to admit that coercion is rape because that would require them to admit to themselves that they have raped a woman. Like when men waited until a woman was drunk to ask her to go home with him. like men who ask over and over again until a woman says yes. Like the woman said no 100 times, and on the 101th time she said yes because she was just tired of feeling pressured and gave in. Like when a woman said, I'm not sure if I want to keep going, and the guy kept going. Like when a woman said, yeah, I'm down to do stuff, then you hang out in person, and then she says, actually, never mind, I don't actually want to do stuff, and the guy forces her to do stuff anyways. But he's not attacking her, right? He just gently said, no, you said you were going to do stuff, and then does stuff to her. None of those are consent. And guys know this in the back of their tiny mind, and that is why they get so defensive when women start talking about nuanced consent, because they know that they have already violated it. They know that they have already SA'd a woman. Women can do this to men as well. It's just significantly less. Consent isn't indefinite.
I heard the news recently about this case, I don't know if it's in Zimbabwe, of this woman who was filing for divorce from her husband because he basically did not understand that no means no. And I think for her, for the longest time, she did not know that she had the right to say no to her husband. So I felt like we need to talk about that. Now, one of the facts of the case is the man does not want a divorce. She filed for the divorce, but it's in contention because for him, he says that he loves his wife and he feels like they can work it out. However, for her, she says that this man is insatiable. He would keep her up, like having sex the whole night. And if she tries to refuse, if she's tired, if she has a headache, Nabas both she go collect. He's going to beat her. He's going to fight her. Basically make her life miserable. And I think it's not until she opened up to somebody that they told her, he can't do that. He's not supposed to do that. Whether he's your husband, he has to ask you first. He has to get your permission. Because he might be your husband, but he's not your owner. He doesn't own your body. You're going to raise rapists and pedophiles in your home. Boys who assume that because they are boys and because they are men, they take what they want when they want it. No. Just because she's your wife does not mean that you get to do whatever you want to her when you want to do it.
When your health and safety are on the line, how much longer can you stay in that relationship? In my humble opinion, there comes a point where divorce isn't failure, it's the only escape. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against marriage. I truly believe that two people who respect and support each other can build something beautiful. But for far too many women, marriage becomes a cycle of control, abuse, and silent suffering. Even speaking about it right here is an act of defiance. It's a step towards breaking shame, breaking stigma, and reclaiming what consent truly means. These women deserve more than survival. They deserve to be heard. They deserve love, safety, and peace. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, you, my dear, are fearfully and wonderfully made, and no one, absolutely no one, has the right to take that away from you. Ta-ta.